Last time on Yu-Gi-Oh!
Draw your last pathetic card so I can end this, Yugi.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba. But it does contain the unstoppable Zushin!
Impossible!
I've assembled all 5 special cards, all 5 pieces of the puzzle.
It's not possible! No one's ever been able to call him Zushin!
Obliterate!
Now was the time to put my deck through its paces. Partially because we're in lockdown, but mostly because it's the year 2020. The real cards can be thrown away as you can duel on a computer instead. Now, for any normal game, you might expect one to use an official licensed product. However, the best that Konami offer remain the 3 Power of Chaos PC games from 2004. For the small price of £30 sterling per game, you could duel one of the main characters from the TV show, get unusable cards from a ridiculously small card pool when you do win, and then add those to your deck to duel the same character with the same deck over and over again. Even the Star Wars Battlefront remakes represent better value for money. My favourite feature of these games are that they dragged the original voice actors of Yugi, Kaiba and Joey to meme into the duel at various events. Truly this was ahead of its time.
Now you can't attack for 3 whole turns. Swords of Revealing Light!
Don't tell me you're trying to resurrect it!
I can't decide which of these 2 bits of dialogue were the most poignant. Somehow, these games are way better than the Yu-Gi-Oh! Online platform, which combines the best features of pay-to-win and pay-to-play. They even sold a USB stick in Toys R Us containing the virtual cards and dueling credits needed to play the game. Considering the comparative sophistication of Konami's console titles, it almost felt like they were deliberately producing garbage PC games to force customers to buy the trading cards. Here is where the wonderful, non-toxic Yu-Gi-Oh! Community stepped forward, and today there are multiple unofficial channels through which one could duel online. One of the most well-used is Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, and this was indeed the first place that I took my Zushin deck. Just as a reminder, my deck was built to summon Zushin the Sleeping Giant on the first turn, using a non-convoluted 10-card soft loop. Unfortunately, when I logged in, I found they had prematurely updated their banned list so my deck couldn't be played. Despite the list only affecting 2 cards, these were not readily replaceable without a complete deck overhaul. This meant I had to look elsewhere. Dueling Book immediately turned me off by presenting the hallucinogenic nightmare that is their landing page. This includes the visual gymnastics one would need to read text in their font sizes and loads of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards they'd actually be using. I decided that my vibrant personality would be better off on Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling Nexus. This website was actually aesthetically pleasing, and despite a couple of drawbacks, which I'll get to later, it allowed me to play with other players less than 24 hours before my deck was banned. I can attribute a large quantity of my wins to a sole ingredient: time. You see, completing my combo requires around 40 monster summons and 80 card effects or activations. Even when fueled by a combination of energy drinks and muscle memory, the minimum time I could achieve my combo was around 10.5 minutes. This seemed to be a little too long for some of my dueling companions. Now if this were dueling book, then I'd have actual, replays rather than just screen recordings. But I'd also have this obvious chat box on the right hand side. Here I could have reassured my opponents that after a moderate amount of time, they'd get the chance to fight the legend that is Zushin the Sleeping Giant, and they'd get their whole deck to do so. Unfortunately, Dueling Nexus doesn't have an obvious chat box in which I could convey such a message. It does, however, have this completely unobvious chat box, in which I only noticed the dialogue whilst editing for this video. I hadn't actually received that many messages myself.
Yeah.
Although this duelist was right on point. Sometimes I played semi-competent duelists who were running Nibiru. This card could devastate my combo as soon as I'd summoned 5 monsters. However, I had a defense mechanism too, in the form of Golden Castle of Stromberg. Whilst I used this card to summon a monster from my deck, its side effects include destroying my opponent's monsters if they're foolish enough to attack me, and for a cost it prevents itself from being destroyed. That cost is 10 cards from my deck, which I also have to pay once per turn. My opponents would surely win if they utilized some patience. As we've seen though, this isn't in the mindset of the online Yu-Gi-Oh player. That is except one special individual. This Gandhi clone was the first duelist I played Zushin against. At this point, I was in uncharted territory and retreated to my usual pattern of playing Golden Castle and passing. Gandhi then revealed that he was playing a worm deck, a brilliant revelation on 3 counts. The likelihood of running into a worm player is pretty slim, as it's well recognized for being a terrible archetype. Like my deck, worms were another used by a beloved antagonist from the TV show. 50-year-old Trudge would debut the deck as a police officer in Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, many moons after beating up Joey, Tristan and Yugi in school. Worms also have an ambitious boss monster in the form of Worm Zero. This gains strength for every worm used in its fusion summon. Whilst Gandhi only used 2 in its first summon, by playing Future Fusion he would have the opportunity to use every worm monster in his deck. That is provided the duel lasts 2 more turns. Now, I was in the position to win, but didn't need to be in any rush. Though I was low on cards, Jackpot 7 would allow me to stop depleting my deck, and given how patient he had been with me, and that in my last video I actively encouraged deck users to let their opponents play, I had a decision to make. Reward this saint's patience, or cut him down with an anticlimactic stroke. I mean, what did you expect? I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Online with a degenerate deck.